You're crawling through a tunnel so narrow your shoulders scrape both walls. The air is cold, wet, and smells like stone. No sound, no light, not even a sliver. It's the kind of dark that presses on your eyes until you start seeing colors that aren't there. You've been crawling for 20 minutes and you have no idea how far this tunnel goes. Then your torch clears the passage. And on the wall in front of you, caught in that shaking orange light, a lion is staring back at you. It's not carved, it's not scratched. Someone painted it. Long before farming, before the wheel, before writing existed anywhere on Earth, a person knelt in this exact spot and gave a lion eyes. That's the moment we're chasing right now. Not the finished painting sitting safe behind museum glass today. The moment before it, the torch, the silence. The person who crawled this deep on purpose. Here's the first thing that should bother you. These caves weren't homes. Nobody lived back here, this far from daylight. At Chauvet Cave in France, the deepest paintings sit hundreds of meters inside the mountain, past passages so tight you'd have to belly crawl through them. Cave bears used these same tunnels to hibernate, and their claw marks are still scratched into the walls today. So whoever came back here wasn't decorating a living space. They were doing something else, somewhere they had to fight just to reach. And they didn't come empty-handed. At Chauvet, researchers found a child's footprints pressed into soft clay, walking alongside the paw prints of a wolf. The child was carrying a torch. You can tell because every so often they wiped the burning end against the ceiling to knock off the ash and keep the flame alive. Those smudge marks are still there, dated to roughly 26,000 years ago. A kid, alone in the deep dark, tending a small fire so it wouldn't go out. But here's what's fascinating. The paintings themselves are not clumsy. They're not stick figures. The animals have shading. They have weight. Artists held wet ochre in their mouths and blew it through hollow bones, spraying a fine mist around their own hand and leaving a ghostly print stamped in negative on the rock. At Lascaux, painters worked by the light of burning animal fat. Over 100 small stone lamps left scattered across the floor. Tilt one of those lamps just right, and the flicker makes a painted leg seem to twitch. Some artists even gave a bison extra legs on purpose. So in shifting firelight, the animal appeared to gallop across the wall. Prehistoric cinema, tens of thousands of years before film was invented. None of this pigment came ready-made either. Someone had to mine red and yellow iron oxide out of the rock and black manganese dioxide, then grind it into powder between two stones. That powder got mixed with water, animal fat, or plant juice until it turned into a paste thick enough to hold a line, or thin enough to spray. Grinding took hours. It had to happen before anyone went underground, by the light of the sun, long before the torch was ever lit. So the person who picked up that brush wasn't just surviving the Ice Age, they were thinking about light, about motion, about how a shape changes when your eyes are scared and half blind in the dark. That's not an accident. That's a choice. Which raises the real question. Why go through all of it? Why crawl for an hour in pitch black, grind pigment by feel, risk your only flame dying in a cave full of animals that could kill you just to paint something almost nobody would ever see? For a long time, the favorite answer was hunting magic. The idea was simple. Paint a bison, spear it symbolically on the wall, and the real hunt goes easier. It's a tidy theory, it just doesn't hold up well. Most painted animals show no wounds at all. And the animals painted the most, like horses and lions, often aren't the ones that show up as bones at the campfire. But here's what's stranger still. In cave after cave, the paintings cluster in spots where sound behaves oddly. Chambers that ring, hum, or throw an echo back at you when you clap or shout. Researchers who mapped this out found that painted panels line up with acoustic hotspots far more often than chance would allow. The art seems to sit exactly where the rock itself answers back. Some think that's no accident, that certain walls were treated like a thin place, somewhere the ordinary world and something else could almost touch. That idea feeds into another theory built around trance. Some archaeologists argue that someone entered these deep chambers to reach an altered state of mind, brought on by darkness, exhaustion, or rhythm, and painted what they saw behind their own closed eyes. It would explain why some marks are abstract, geometric, almost hallucinatory, sitting right beside the lifelike animals. But here's where it gets genuinely strange. For over a century, everyone assumed only our species could do this. Painting was supposed to be the line separating us from every other human that ever lived. Then in 2018, scientists dated the mineral crust that had grown over paintings in 3 Spanish caves, using a technique called uranium-thorium dating. The results said those paintings were at least 64,000 years old, one hand stencil over 66,000. Modern humans didn't reach Europe until about 20,000 years after that. The only humans standing in Spain at that time were Neanderthals. Neanderthals painted caves. The species we spent a century calling brutish and simple was pressing red ochre onto rock and blowing pigment around their own hands tens of thousands of years before we ever set foot on the continent. If you want more of this, the real research behind the myths without the museum lecture voice, that's what this channel does, so stick around and subscribe. And here's the layer that recontextualizes everything again. That same Neanderthal population had already been piercing seashells and staining them with red pigment as jewelry over 100,000 years before that cave art was ever painted. Which means the urge to mark the world with meaning, to leave behind a symbol that says more than "I was hungry" or "I was cold," might not belong to us at all. It might be older than our entire species. It might be a feature of being human, in the widest sense of that word, shared with people who no longer exist. So why did they paint in caves? Hunting magic, sound, trance, memory, grief? None of the theories fully explain it, and most honest researchers will tell you plainly, we don't know. Not for certain. What we do know is that somewhere in the deep dark, more than 60,000 years ago, something that was not us picked up a torch, crawled into the coldest, quietest part of the earth, and left a mark on purpose. That single fact might be the most human thing ever discovered. And it wasn't even done by humans.